All right, Heidi, I have flipped on recording, and we're going to get going. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening at another TPMA talk. My name is Adam Aronson, recently joined the TPMA board. I've joined as the new treasurer, replacing Lee Garrison in that role, and joined by some of my other colleagues here on the TPMA board. Heidi and Rena will be your hosts for the evening. I'm very excited to be welcoming Jake Hite as we have a conversation around the whole solution, product, services, and a little bit of kibitzing. I would like to give special thanks to our sponsors. Their continued support helps make programming at TPMA possible, and also are great advocates for the product community here in Toronto. We are very honored to have Jake Hite joining us this evening. He is the VP of Product at Properly. It's a Toronto-based Series B funded startup transforming the home buying and selling experience across Canada. He is both a veteran of U.S. Armed Forces and property technology, and has been the interim leader of product at Kiavi, member of the founding team of Zillow Offers, and also working in the iBuying real estate space, and principal and founder of a company in the analytics and research sector. Please welcome me in joining Jake. Jake, thanks you so much for joining us this evening. Really wonderful to have you here with us. I am going to ask you to unmute. Is that going to work?
There we go.
There we go.
I was like, I'm on mute. I can't do anything, which might be better for all of you if you can't hear me talking, because I can go. If you ask my team, I'd probably go on for quite some time. But thanks, Adam, for the introduction, and I really appreciate it. Super excited to be here to kibitz with all of you.
Fantastic. So tell us a bit about your product journey.
Ooh. So you kind of hit the highlights, going a little bit deeper for myself. So I started out as a data scientist before data scientists were cool at the university, at the US Army. So I had the opportunity while I was there to analyze data on petascale computers, if anybody's familiar with those. To generally put a petascale, because this is like weird, interesting factoid, an Xbox has about 12 teraflops in it. Like the new Xbox X has about 12 teraflops, and that's about 1.2% of a petaflop, which is the size of computers. So you can imagine these are the weird, creepy computers that they talk about in like the spy movies and things. But I had the opportunity to do a ton of work there, and then moved out to Seattle, where being in the military, I was kind of like, all right, I'm done taking other people's orders. I kind of want to do my own thing. And I had the opportunity to be very connected with the head of Xbox analytics and data science team, and the Amazon Kindle data science team. And so didn't want to work for either one of those guys, because we had done things that probably bosses and employees should not do before, but had the opportunity to contract with them, built that business out, and eventually sold that in 2016, but kept one of my clients, and that one was Zillow. And it's really particularly something that I'm passionate about is the concept of home and the idea of a roof over everyone's head. And so wanted to really keep that that particular client, and they asked me to come on board. So spent some time there as a product manager, and it just kind of took off from there, where I grew with the company, had the opportunity to build out Zillow Offers, which was Zillow's iBuying business. About $6 billion in revenue in the last full year annually, so pretty large. And then felt the call across the border, if you will, where the concept of home, I think, is even more prevalent due to Canadians move a little bit less than Americans do, a little more rooted to neighborhoods, to streets than Americans are. And so really I'm now getting to play in that space and understanding what makes home exciting for Canadians.
Fantastic. So product management is this interdisciplinary group, and I find, like, as we talk about product, every organization has a different notion of what product management is and exactly who the right product manager is, and growth stage and value and so on. So, like, in this journey, what was it for you? When did you know you wanted to become a product manager?
Yeah, I'm laughing because, like, it's so true that everyone has their own, like, what should a PM be responsible for? And you're like, some people are like, that's just a project manager. And you're like, nope, that's not what we do. And it's something that's very interesting, particularly in this space. So for me, when I knew I wanted to become a product manager, was I had the opportunity when I was I had worked with PMs, right? I was running a consulting shop. I had worked with PMs, obviously, they were basically the partners, even though their contract wasn't there, analyzing, working on different things, but truly didn't understand the role. And so when I got to Zillow is a high product-led culture, where PMs are fully empowered to make almost all the calls. And it was up until the Zillow offers, it was a pretty tech-only business, like lead generation marketplaces. I think we all kind of know how those fundamentally work, and they're more tech than non-tech involved. And so I had the opportunity to work on a product idea with my soon to become boss around I'm laughing because I haven't thought about this in a long time, but it was around inspections. And so it was this idea that we had that what if we could, on Zillow, I'm assuming most people here are familiar with the concept of Zillow if I'm referencing that, but it's a large market listings like realtor.ca, like Properly, some of those types of places. The idea was, what if we put an inspection report on every home in America? That was like, you could go to Zillow, you could look at a listing, and you could get the inspection report. Just like that. Maybe you'd have to sign in or do something. And that was the idea. And so we bought 500 inspection reports of homes around Orlando, put them up, and then did an A/B test on it. And I was the data scientist on the team because I had transitioned over and just taken a data. And I was like, this is great. I'm a data person. It's more data. I want these things. And come to find out, people got freaked out. People were like, this home looks great in pictures, but it says potential may have a foundational crack that is 1 centimeter long in the upper south, like right corner of the southeast window. People like just see this mass list of things. They don't have this emotional connection to the home. And so they're like, nope, done, walk away. And at that moment, I was like, there is more to the world than data. I knew that. I obviously working at what I did for the US Army, like it was trying to understand people, but it was like, oh, I can apply this skill set. I can apply data plus psychology to like truly understand humans and how they use things. And so that was the moment, I think, that I was able to be like, oh, there's more than this. And then being able to like see that impact, see the results of that. And then my boss, Esther, at the time was like, yeah, that was a bad idea. Shut it down, move on. And there was no consequences. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you did a bad job. It was like, oh yeah, that was not a good idea. Let's move on to the next idea. I was like, that seems like a cool job.
Yeah, being able to experiment, being able to learn and to figure out what works and to take that through the process and scale is definitely a privilege, right? To be able to burn money, but learn in the process, and getting comfortable with that. Like, I think there's definitely a false perception that everything is going to go perfectly in product. and we learn on a daily basis. In fact, this is not the case.
Yeah, it's something I've been stressing with my teams lately quite a bit is we can't control things like if Bank of Canada is going to increase interest rates. We can't control things like the fact people are overbidding by $300,000 on a listing on a home's listing price. Literally this week. I'm like, you guys do know the market is softening. Like we see that, but okay. What we can control is the speed at which we learn and apply those learnings. And like, that's the one thing that we can control. And that speaks to experimentation and testing and all of that. But it's very much a mantra of like, maximize our learnings. Don't maximize the number of features that you're delivering because half of those features or more, probably like 90% of those features are just throwaway work. But the learnings from them can inform us and refine and develop. And it's been kind of the theme of a lot of my work that I've done up until this point.
Awesome. So for all the different facets of product management, maybe from the product marketing side to the product, the technical product management into the spectrum, what is your product superpower?
New product innovation, probably I would say is the like big superpower that I have. That being said, it's the pairing of customer psychology with that. So my master's degree was in decision science. And so it was a understanding of how people irrationally make decisions. Whereas economics is like, how do you rationally make a decision if all things price and all of these things? But for really being able to incorporate psychological study and sociology into technology and data is that degree. And so I bring that lens really in depth in the research and data analytics piece to new product innovation. So there's a very, I would say it's like a combination of jobs to be done, lean and intuition, because you have to have the secret sauce in there. You can't just rely on a process to magically make new products that I've rinsed and repeated on multiple times and found good success. So that's probably my superpower, if you will.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think as much as people would like to believe themselves to constantly be rational actors, we all make.
Have you bought a home? Like, I guarantee you, Adam, that if you bought a home, there was definitely at least one irrational decision you made in there.
Yes, I did have that experience last year in Toronto, and it was a bit ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm on the taller side. I'm 6'6", and I contemplated a house where I couldn't stand up in the basement, and thought to myself, "It'll be okay. There'll just be one floor I can't use."
What do you feel about doing a customer like a customer interview later with some of my team about trade-offs?
There we go. I'm gonna stop revealing so much about myself to not make myself.
Maybe that's my superpower, getting you to share personal details.
This is about Jake, not about Adam.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this session and we were talking about solutions. What does it mean to you as a product leader when you think about solutions in the context of products?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the business, right? So everything is contextual. So just to like preface all of this in that this is based on my experience, that doesn't mean that 100% of what I'm going to say is going to be applicable to all businesses. So just want to put that disclaimer out there. Like Jake said, no, that doesn't work. So, but I built my career in prop tech. And so prop tech by nature has to be, because of the irrational and the rational decision-making that's happening, has to have humans involved. You need, when you're buying a house, you need an agent to tell you, Adam, you're 6'6". You really want a whole floor of your house that you're not going to use? And maybe your spouse or your partner would say that, but an agent, hopefully, if you got a good one, would tell you that too. And And so when I think about solutions, when I think about how we describe that, you have to marry technology and humans in the space that I work in. And so there is things that technology can do way better than a human can. I think generally that's a sentiment that we all agree on. Making sure earnest money deposits get from the buyer to the seller. There's a lot of technology that can do that. It's called ACH, it's called wires, it's called Zelle or PayPal. Like there's lots of options out there. But that doesn't mean that the technology can say, hey, right now, I think with this seller and the way that that listing agent is talking to me, we need to offer $25,000 as an earnest money versus 10 to make sure that they know we're serious. And so when you think about a solution to a problem, you have to be very nuanced in knowing and understanding the marriage that has to happen between technology. And sometimes it's technology first or technology forward. And sometimes it's human first or human forward. And sometimes it's both. And you're needing to build technology to allow people who want to do it themselves or do it some of themselves or do some of it yourself. DSIY is what we've been calling it. And some who want kind of handheld all the way through. And so that's what I think of when I talk about a solution is products can't be just technology. I can't have a team that's just going to go focus and build that. I have to have a team that's thinking about the customer experience end to end. A PM that's thinking, okay, if we do this thing and then this agent says X, Y, and Z, what do we do in those types of things?
Fantastic. And I think product being different at different organizations, I think we can bring in that same idea of it's contextual here, whether it's that one product differs from another, and so that solution differs, or perhaps it's the company maturity or culture that differs. Where is it that you think the differences are, maybe in your experience, if in different contexts you've seen that the solution is fundamentally different from one place to another?
Yeah. Story time, as they say on Instagram and TikTok, I guess, according to my niece and nephew. They've been doing that to me a lot. Apparently that's a trend or a meme or something. I don't know. I'm too old these days. I built Zillow offers on the back of Google Sheets and Google Forms. We literally transacted our first house. We spent $450,000 on 189 King Street. I'm not going to share the city because trying to respect whoever owns that house's privacy, on the back of Google Sheets. And that was a company that had literally $3 billion in the war chest at the time. Like, that's a lot of money that we could have built a perfect solution to. But the reality of it is that even at the company maturity level, it can vary, but the product maturity level is, what is everybody has MVP or MLP or whatever the thing is, but what's the least rigorous way that you can prove out those learnings to be able to action them and react and move forward? Did we eventually build technology out? Oh, yes, we did. There was so much going on all over there. There was a whole workflow engine and everything, but we didn't know what we didn't know. And we needed the ability to be like, oh, we got to change this script, or we got to ask for this data point on this call. And so we put humans in place that we trusted, that we worked with, that the PMs literally sat here, and the 6 people that were answering the calls sat we're literally across the aisle so that we could talk all day long. And so when I think about where product responsibilities sit, it's really about what's going to solve the problem the best while maximizing learnings. There's an old saying in product management. I don't know who it comes from, probably Marty Kagan, because he's the Elon Musk's Twitter of product management, but it's building products solving customer problems in ways that work for the business, right? I like that phrase a lot, regardless of where it comes from, because it puts customer problems first, but it doesn't disregard in ways that work for the business, right? It's saying, hey, that's what we're trying to do, but we have to do it in cognizant here. And so being in context of the company maturity, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the company culture is like, we want to go all tech all the time. That's probably your product and your business is probably leaning more towards that. I think about project management tools like Asana or some of those other things. It'd be weird to me if they started offering project managers with Asana. Like that just seems like an awkward thing to be like, here, sign up for the Pro Plus Plus subscription and you get a project manager. Like what? But it makes a ton of sense if you think about Intuit and like TurboTax and some of those things of having an accountant review, like you did it all, and then having an accountant review it to make sure it's accurate, right? So there's nuance to that. And you just kind of got to play with what are you trying to accomplish? What is the objectives? What are the goals that you're trying to do? Always with learning and what's the shortest path to get there.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think you speak really well to some of the differences, like an early experiment, large organization that seeing some signal is going to scale that solution.
Oh, that's happening at a small organization too, Adam. Like I got some stuff on Google Sheets that shouldn't be on Google Sheets right now, but that's another story.
And it's totally fair, and right tool for the right job. But maybe in that Google Sheets and some Zapier combination and something, you're kind of tooling it and figuring out how to do this, and perhaps it's not that efficient. And at a point you're thinking about the economics of this solution, and you're thinking like, okay, learning, I'm willing to spend more. It's okay for there to be more hand holding, that relationship, the PM to the person sitting next to them, that works in the beginning. But then when things start to take off, when they start to scale, at some point you or your finance partner is going to say, okay, but like, how do we get more money out of this? How do we improve the efficiency of it? So like, thinking about these differences, the product, the services, and they have very different kind of economic footprints to that. How do you think about that from the beginnings of a product as it's starting to mature, and how you make it a really good value-oriented experience after you've got the growth?
Yeah, putting on the kind of business side of the PM's role hat of like, 9 out of 10 times you don't work for a nonprofit, so you got to make money somehow, right? And finance is going to require that. The model that I tend to use around this is actually called the Zone to Win framework, if people are familiar with that. But it's the idea that every product goes through a few different efforts, and there's different levels of investment in 4 different quadrants. So it's a 2x2. And the 4 starting in the lower left to the lower right is incubation, transformation, performance, and productivity. And so I think about the terms of like the investments of time and money in those 4 areas. And so something that's in incubation is really more about success metrics, milestones, like proof of concepts. Transformation is like, hey, in the next X amount of time that we care about, this is going to actually revolutionize the business. And so that's where the economic profiles, I think, come in of saying, okay, we've done this thing, but it's really human intensive. It's really human services intensive. We need to augment with technology or automate at some points where it's a variety of different things. I'll give you an example from Zillow here. Zillow had Zillow Closing Services, which is the equivalent to legal services in Canada. Title and escrow, mortgage, and then Zillow Offers, which let's call it brokerage for our purposes here. In that journey, if one customer was using all 3 of those Zillow services, mind you, to the customer, they're all Zillow. They may talk to different people, but it's all Zillow. We asked for the same damn document, pardon my French, 42 different times from that customer. Yeah, I know. As all PMs here, we should be cringing at that horrible customer experience. And And we calculated it out, and that cost the company about $400 on every single transaction. And it literally was, we just created a, like when one person got it, if they titled it in a specific way, it got sent to a central database and everybody would just query it off of that database. And if it wasn't there, then they would have to access it. And we just had to change 3 people's jobs, roughly 3 people's jobs, 3 groups' jobs. And so that was one that was more in the transformation zone, right? Like we're trying to get this thing prepped for prime time so it can deliver high margin business revenue. Whereas if we would have tried to solve that problem when we were working on Zillow offers at like day 1 and through maybe even day like 365, it would have been a joke. We'd have been like, what the heck is this thing? Like, why are we even trying to do this? Ignoring customer experience, only thinking about it from a business lens. So the economic profile, I think, shifts more to, you want to have the technology take on more of the work so that the humans can start taking on more of the relationship, the things that you can never automate. But that takes from a product perspective, like that's how the revenue is made. That takes a very specific, deliberate approach and nuance to building that right technology, because you have to have the frame of mind. A lot of PMs are oriented towards a customer, right? We all are like, what's the customer problem we're trying to solve? But at the end of the day, you have to think about it a little bit differently, because you have to think about what, by solving this operator's problem or this particular problem, it's impacting the customer experience. So you have to accept that you're maybe a degree removed from the actual solving of the problem, but can have significant impacts.
As yeah, as a product maker, when I use other people's products, I see like, oh, that was really great. Oh, that was really clean. I think it's totally different context. Learning about movies, if you're sitting there and the theater goes dark and then the lights come up and it's like no time passed, that it was an amazing story. You were kind of just in it the entire time, and success, indication of a really good film. Curious, from your experience, when you've used other products that like you did something, the technology was there, you didn't even know it was happening, or like never had to think about it because it was so clean throughout. Any recent or standout from the past product experiences that were like that for you?
Yeah, I'm going to take it a little bit different and not go technology with it, but kind of technology. So my husband is very, very big into Alexa. Jeff Bezos and Andy Jassy are listening to me. I've accepted it, moving on. When I think about Alexa and the fact that we have the Echo Show, or the Echo Frame, or whatever it's called, the 15-inch one that mounts to the wall. We've had these Echoes for a long time. We've had different screens and all these different things. That one has actually now become more of a bulletin board. And I don't even think about the fact that if I need to leave my husband a note, what I used to was come into my office, grab a sticky note, write it out, stick it on the fridge, leave it, or add it to the grocery list or whatever. That's just there now. It's like right next to the fridge, it's in the kitchen, and I just automatically go, Alexa, add, well, it's probably going to do something, so I'm not going to, or I ask it to leave a note for that. And it's fundamentally, and not to toot Amazon's horn, but I think it's fundamentally shaped and been mindful and thoughtful of what are the everyday actions that people do and how do we enable them, to the point of like my calendar's on there. So if I have to go to the kitchen, I work from home 100%. I have to go to the kitchen and get coffee. I live in Seattle, it's an addiction. I can actually see when my next meeting is. So I know exactly how much time. That doesn't mean I'm going to be on time for it sometimes, but I can see exactly what's happening. Like it's just present with me. And so I think that's actually a great human computer interaction dynamic that isn't even voice. It's just the fact of like this digital billboard that kind of runs your life, that helps you run your life in a easier way.
I can imagine
Super
that
Juanita, I
earlier
like
version.
that.
Pardon?
Oh, Lee was making a comment about Super Juanita instead of saying the A word.
um, I can imagine early versions of this might have been messy, Alexa and Siri and so forth. I'm curious, you know, as you've been a product maker, have you gotten into that kind of Reed Hastings experience, that you've waited too long, you're not embarrassed, and maybe overinvested, and like how do you strike that balance when you're thinking about getting out to market, learning, and coming up with the best solution that you've got the time for?
Yeah, to go back to an earlier point we were talking about, so I orient towards learning a lot. So I actually had a conversation with a brand new PM on my team, wicked smart, never been a PM before. I needed somebody working on SEO on the product side. And I was like, you are the guy, you actually have a product mindset. Let's make you a PM. Cool, you're a PM. And he was like, all right, so now I'm a PM. What does this mean? So I've been coaching and teaching him, but he had a question where he's like, what's good enough? Who gets to decide what good enough is? And I was like, oh, you're a PM. That's your job. He's like, oh, okay, cool. I think about it like this. So I think if the goal of a product team is to maximize learnings and act on those learnings at a high level, there's many other goals, there's many other things, but that's like the mantra that I believe in. Then is that extra feature, is that polish, is that thing going to give us exponentially more learnings, or is it just going to give us 1% more? And so there is a base case. There is like for example, like a mobile app. You can't just add a feature to a mobile app that doesn't exist. Like you need to have the mobile app exist at a base level. But it's going to be ugly the first time. And Reed Hastings is like, if you're not embarrassed by your first version, I think, right? I actually take that to like the fourth version. If you're not embarrassed by the first 4 versions of your thing, that means you've been too late. And that's really about the idea that customers will tell you what they like and they don't like just by their actions. You don't need to survey them. If you've got good analytics and good tracking, they will tell you what they like and they don't like and find value. And then you double down on the places they find value and why. And then you can take those other features that maybe were important, but they can't see the connection and reframe there, but you're always doing it from a learning perspective. So I'm very much on the side of like minimal ship, get it out, experiment. I have a end game goal for my team. That's been my rallying mantra of 25 experiments by the end of the year. So it's a team of 5. So it's basically like 5 experiments per PM. And so it's really this mantra of like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, customers like giving feedback, believe it or like, I've done research for a long time and like, they will give you their opinions. And, you know, if you pay them for it, that's a bonus, but oftentimes they'll just give you your opinions. And so, yeah, I'm very much on the line of like doing that. The difference is when you're talking about a services business. So when you're talking about agents, for example, in my world, there's a little more nuance to it. You can't just be like, agent, go do whatever you want, because there's an emotional connection to that agent. There's emotional, you're meeting a different set of needs. And so you have to be mindful that when you're designing that, having the right people who can make decisions in the moment, saying, hey, if these are our guiding principles for this product, like this is generally how you should make decisions. And if you don't, like one of the things you're facing with a customer doesn't fit into these principles, then you have the right person to be able to act in the company and the customer's best interest.
It's, yeah, I appreciate the perspective around experimentation, around learning. I want to bring it back into our conversation about solutions where there's this complement of the product and the services, and You
Yeah.
know, sometimes you can keep learning with the product, but also push things even further ahead if you haven't brought enough solution to market with services. So, you know, a couple times recently, I've been telling my team, you know, they don't call them battle scars for nothing. So curious, like you've gone to market, you're running that experiment, you know there's a little bit more you can get out of it. Are you somehow like masking that with some additional services, or taking the moment to not need to use more software in order to learn more about that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm facing similar types of challenges that you are, that you kind of illustrated, or maybe not challenges, but dynamics. I think I've definitely gotten to market with too much or too little of a solution, generally speaking. One of my mentors who runs product for a small and medium business at Facebook once told me, since we're quoting adages here, is the done is better than perfect. And I've kind of like kept that mantra really with me. And so when we go out with too much with services or with key pieces that are engaged around it, there's I tend to work with the PM team to try to get them very much involved, and we're doing continuous discovery after the fact. Is it working? Is it not working? I'm less concerned about too little of a solution at times with technology. We went out, so Zillow owns a company called Street Easy, which is in New York City. There's no MLSs in New York City, and so it kind of is the default MLS. And when they bought that company, the data was a mess. And so one of the things we had to do was figure out how are we going to move our data models to a vertical living situation, right? Where you have like CCNRs and condo agreements and dynamics that all play. And so the too little in that case was not really an option. And so, because it was kind of an all or nothing thing. Like we needed to solve the problem of not being able to have condo level data in the Zillow databases or not. And so there's iterative things, like you can say this set of features is more important or this type of thing, but that was an internal solution. And so we had some flavors in that. So we went with a good enough solution on that one. Cost me about 6 months of dev time. And so that one's a battle scar. But the mistake that we made was that we didn't consider the fact that this is going to sound silly now that I think about it. There is such a thing as half addresses in New York City. And so, yeah, like 1/16 and a half. So we were like, great, we can just rely on the city data to like define what a building is. Yeah, no, that didn't work out so hot for us. And so it forced us to rethink things and I realized don't rely on the government necessarily to give you accurate data as a general rule. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely battle scars that have happened there, or even, I mean, Zillow Offers is a big battle scar for me. So I started that business. I was like the founding PM. It grew to 6 billion, and then they shut it down. I would like to say I haven't been there for 2 years, so it wasn't necessarily my fault that it was a mistake, but I still think there is a market there. But it is a battle scar to be like, this thing that I built and that I know there is a need for is one that we didn't get managed well. And so it's primarily because of what we're talking about right now is the PMs were, there was a large majority, I would say 70% of the PMs were just tech only, and weren't thinking in this kind of fusion space as they needed to in real estate.
A struggle of mine, which I think may be relatable in this case, is like having enough time, having enough information, learning what you can from it. And, I will always take a healthy dose of luck. It can be painful to have the right idea at the wrong moment.
Yep.
In some of those cases. And as a product maker, like you said, 2 years ago, you left it in what was likely a healthy trajectory, and circumstances change, and it becomes really challenging, and kind of hitting all of those notes together to make that right chord with the product is a challenge for us. But as hard as that can be, it's also a really amazing opportunity in creating products to have the opportunity to serve that market. I've got one last question for you,
Sure.
and I want to just prime the audience. If you all have questions for Jake, please raise your hand if you would like to share it online, or if you would like, by all means, use the chat, and I'll gladly call them out as we go. So, thinking into the future a little bit, good opportunity, a little prediction territory. Curious how bullish you are on AI, and whether or not AI is going to take over everyone's jobs. Should you and I be worried as product makers, or perhaps on the, we've been also talking about the services that complement our products. Is AI going to encroach in that space? I mean, clearly your shopping list is well in hand at this point.
Yeah, apparently. To my husband or my chagrin, depending on who added to the shopping list. Is AI going to take over everyone's jobs? That's a pretty broad statement, because I take it to oh, we don't need government anymore. The prime minister is this AI robot that just feeds out things. And then we get into some really crazy sci-fi movies that scare me. But do I think it's going to take over a vast portion of things that we have routinely seen as busy work or repeatable work? Absolutely. I think you just look at some of the things like OCR, right? So looking at optical character recognition. So if we think about a real estate transaction, obviously, I spent a lot of time here. There's a purchase and sale agreement or an offer letter, and people need specific pieces of data out of that. And so OCR, just reading that, synthesizing it, putting it, and then you can bring in AI on top of that, because now you've got data that was previously captured in a document. And so we've relied on humans to translate that into a computer system. So I don't know. Okay, good. I have a 10-month-old puppy who's back there pretending to be Chewbacca at the moment. So I think there's going to be a level of it, but I think there is, when we think about products building, when we think about things that are intimately involved with the human experience, we're not at a point, and I follow a lot of neuroscience, technology, fusion. It's kind of a weird addiction of mine. We're not even at a point to replicate a human brain. And so from an AI, I talked about petaflops and all of this at the top. Even with all that computing power, we still can't replicate the same level of computational power that a human brain can. And so when we get there, and I think we're probably a decent ways away from that, then I would maybe be starting to worry. But emotion can never be truly replicated by technology. And we are 100% emotionally driven mammals. Not 100%. We are a majority of it, the time we are emotionally driven animals. And so there is always going to need to be a level of translation, if you will, from highly emotional state to how do we solve that problem. So I don't think our jobs are necessarily, we might be the only people left because we built these machines and now they're trying to keep us going. But yeah, that's kind of the pieces.
Awesome. Jake, thank you so much. Audience, not seeing hands or questions.
I got a few questions that I saw up here. And that they're listing them out in the chat. So any suggestions on getting peers, sales, and dev rallied around a product or solution that is a low price tag item, but of greater strategic importance for the company long-term? Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I think about things in horizons. There's now, next, and later. And our roadmaps at Properly are also done this way. And so the difference flavor is like now, next, and later means I'm not actively working on the next and the laters. From a planning perspective, I think about it in terms of investments. And so there's stuff that we have to do to drive business results now. We need to increase conversion. We need to increase user growth, whatever it is. There's stuff that we need to do next. And that's like, we need to do this thing because it's going to allow us to do increased conversion next quarter or whatever the thing is. And then there's later. And that is the third horizon of saying, if we don't do this, somebody else will. And if we don't do this, or if we don't bet and like take a bet, may go in, may go off. Yes, Lee, you're right. We just don't tell stakeholders that. And so the way I think about it is like, hey, you have to build out a business case. If we don't do this, here's the worst possible scenario, option A. Here's the second worst or like middle scenario. And here's the best scenario. Best scenario always being like, you did that and the thing took off and exponentially grew. And when you're talking about with sales, like there's two different approaches. With sales, it's about dollars. It's always about dollars. It's always about dollars. It's always about dollars. With dev, it's about, hey, this is the frontier of where we're going and people have this problem, but we need to be able to solve these three other problems to solve that other problem. And so devs like to build cool things, but they need to build the right cool things. And so fusing the cool things and the rightness together is a key kind of communication point for the dev.
Awesome. I'm gonna take it to your advice for a new PM for their first 30, 60, 90 days.
30 days is you figuring out what the heck is going on. Like your job is just like, what is the sector you're in if you've never worked in that sector? What are the acronyms that you should know? Who are the people you should know? And then starting to get a sniff of what are the power currents, because they exist. They are the formal power structures, and then there's the informal power structures. So what are the informal power structures that exist? 60 days, you should have a win under your belt. Pick something on the roadmap the team's already been working on and PM the crap out of it. That may mean you project manage it because it's already been, discovery's already been done. It's already been defined. And you're just like helping them like make calls while they're in the development cycle. But getting a win under your belt within that first kind of 45 to 60 days is key. And then 90 days in, you've gotten a win under your belt. You developed and had a better understanding. And now you're at a point where you're saying, okay, I actually need to adjust or change or do something different. And so that's when you start engaging with your EMs and PMs. I like to, your PM colleagues to, hello, this is Atlas, by the way. Atlas doesn't know the meaning of daddy time after 2 p.m. when I'm done working because it's dog park time. So I would say like there's first 30 days, meet the people. First 60 days, get a win under your belt. First 90 days is make your first like medium-sized change or medium-sized movement going forward.
Awesome. Thank you for the great advice. Switching into metrics.
Yeah.
What metrics have you focused on as leading indicators to validate that you're getting traction?
Depends on the product and the use cases we're trying to solve. There's one that's ubiquitous that I do with every new product, just because I like, because it's quantitative in nature because it's a survey, but it's really qualitative, let's be honest. It's basically like how disappointed, we asked the question, how disappointed would you be if you did not have access to blank? And you're looking for people to be very disappointed. You don't want them somewhat, you say very somewhat, the usual 5 linear. I like that because it gives me a quick and easy pulse on that one. And I can just deploy it via like a micro survey and Sprig or any other survey platform. And if it's a technology product, boom, it's there. And it's universal, can work on services, can work on products, whatever, or technology. When I think about like Properly has a search and discovery site. And so there's a depth of engagement that I want to have happen. I want people not to get obsessively compulsive looking at homes, because I think there's an addiction factor that is being actually studied by academics right now of real estate listing sites. But I want people to be engaged and get deeper into it and have a piece around that. And so it depends on that. But some leading indicators are like, in that space would be number of page views, number of products, or number of properties viewed. Are they wanting to engage and using like a calculator if it's on there, of like something that gives me a signal that's like they're finding some level of value. And then pretty much with any product you're using is time to value. And so from the moment they hit to whatever our defined aha moment is, are they finding that? Are they engaging with that? Are they seeing value in that? Which refines continuous. Sorry, this is going to be necessary. I have to play tug of war, otherwise he's going to be bouncing as I answer.
No problem, no problem. All right, so I've got one more for you, and then we're gonna let you run off to the park and your vacation. Looking back at your battle scars, would there be anything you could have done to turn things around, or were they simply inevitable?
I don't know that they were inevitable. I never believe like anything is inevitable. There's definitely things I could have done. I could have, taking Zillow offers, like I could have ensured that we had a tighter, I could have made the case a lot earlier to the leadership that we kind of aqua-hired in, of product managers having a more holistic view between operations and technology. I could have advocated against like automated pricing, and really what took the business down was more the fact that Zillow couldn't accurately price a home. And so like more that they were willing to put money on. They can do it within a range, but when their money was on the line, they struggled with it. We could have spent more time doing the research, doing the discovery. I mean, the largest Kegel competition ever in the world was a Zillow one to improve this estimate. So I think there's definitely things that I could have done, but it's not one single like, oh, if I had only done that one thing, it would have magically made everything better. It's a series of decisions that add up to it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey, talking about solutions, and generally having a fun conversation. Really appreciate it, Jake.
I appreciate everybody chiming in and sharing. Happy to connect on LinkedIn, or if you guys do have questions, Jake B. Hite on Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't have Facebook beyond, like, there's a blank profile out there for business manager, or jake@properly.ca. Happy to engage, and we are hiring, so let me know.
Amazing. Have a wonderful vacation.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Indeed. All right, everybody, that wraps our program for the evening. We're now going to flip into networking, and the breakout rooms are going to be opened in just a moment. So if you're around for that part of the program, look forward to connecting with you there. Thanks so much and have a great evening, everybody.